welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Web of Weird. My name is David. I am your co-host and navigator for today. And in the driving seat, or the co-pilot seat, we can say, is the one and only Mr. Pete Jackson Main, the brother in the house. How are you, dude?
Jazz hands.
Jazz hands.
Um,
Yeah, I have had a few of those this week.
I'm good actually. I mean, I think that I was saying earlier when we were off air that we've had a good day here in the UK. It's been clear blue skies, actually really clear blue skies.
Let me get my
Proper,
diary and make a note, bro, because I
yeah,
don't know.
make a note. What is it today? The 15th of March. Clear
Right.
blue sky with actual real cumulus clouds, little fluffy things floating around in the sky, rather than sort of white out chemtrail misery. So I'm feeling good on that account. Um, yeah, watching some of the stuff that's going around is not too clever. And I think there is a lot of the other thing that's happening in the Fair Isles of Albion at the moment is that there's a lot of people getting sick,
Mm.
including people quite close to me. So I'm hoping it's not too catching, whatever that means.
Whatever that means. And so we are doing this first part, as always, here on YouTube as a little intro just to map out without getting ourselves into trouble what we're going to be talking about today before jumping across to our Rumble channel, where it's a no holds barred kind of a situation. And occasionally the language gets a little fruity and the topics even more so. Uh, but for sure, we're going to be looking at health for a number of reasons. It's been in the news this week, in Britain especially, because apparently they want to get rid of health in general, something like that. At least that's what I understood. If they haven't already got rid of most of most people's health and well-being, and we're going to be having a look at how this story links to some of the other bigger stories going on right now. We could be on the verge of world peace, as strange as that might seem, or we could be on the verge of the opposite. Who knows? But I do feel, bro, that we are in very momentous moments, and we've already had, just in the last couple of days, we had a Saturn Cazimi, and then we had the sort of powerful full lunar blood moon eclipse, which I got to stay up and watch, and then we have a whole series of other things that we'll have a look at in a minute. So I'm going to bring in a bit of astrology into this show because I feel like the astrology might be giving us the pointers about some of the topics that are getting closer and closer to home. Um, so in fact, let me just do that a second, bro. We'll just preface this first few minutes on this part of the call just by giving the coordinates to people. So let me just bring up the slide here. So can you see that, dude? Is that there?
Yep, all clear.
So, at the risk of not getting ourselves into trouble here on YouTube, we're going to keep it safe and just bring up some of the wham bam, thank you, ma'am kind of moments that we have coming up. This was actually for our Quantum Compass show, dude. Looking at the final wave spell of this Sulkin because we are coming into the final 13 days of a Aztec or Mayan, we should say a Mayan solar year, which is the Zolkin, 260 days, 13 times 20, the 1320 calendar. And so this is actually all of the transits and other bits and pieces happening during this wave spell, which started on March the 12th with that Saturn Cazimi. So and the reason I'm bringing this up is not to regurgitate what we've already talked about on the other videos, but just to put this into context, because when I looked at this and we were doing the notes for the shows, and then running it against what we're probably going to talk about over on Rumble shortly, I was like, how does all of this relate? Because these transits are done using Western astrology, which I've come to sort of perceive are the outplay of the energetic astrology, which we might say perhaps is more accurately mirrored in the sidereal, as above, so below. Whereas the Western astrology has this sort of 23, 24-degree offness to it that weirdly coincides pretty much exactly with the tilt of the Earth away from its true north, which I think is interesting. But it gives me these kind of pinch points in which to try and decode the reality in which we live. And the first one I just want to draw attention here to, because it happened on Saturday, would love to get people's feedback on all of these, actually. How did people out there experience these? And a Saturn Cazimi, a Cazimi is when the sun conjuncts a planet or an asteroid, as we featured before, but it's really a death and rebirth process. And as we've joked about before, poor old Saturn, all at sea in Pisces over this last period of time. But really and truly, I think what we're looking at, dude, is the reconstruction of time, which is interesting in the context of the 1320 universal time code, but also Saturn being the holder of the structure. Not that the structure is always bad, but Saturn is the being that was holding the structure of the old paradigm. So when I looked at this with this flow of astrological transits with that eclipse, which maybe we'll get to in a minute as well, I saw the end of the structure. and the system. And I think that we're watching that, dude. So do you have any thoughts on that before we sort of
I thought it's very interesting. I mean, you sprung this one on me, really, but I mean, I respond to it through my own astrology very much. I
Uh-huh.
notice there's a Mercury cazimi. Mercury is huge in my chart.
Right.
Um, but with Saturn, I remember when I went through my own Saturn return, that engagement with structure and how the sort of double-edged sword, or if you like, the nature of structure is that it is necessary and yet it is also, to some extent, restrictive. And a prison, and
Right.
the whole thing about the Saturn return was that you have to endure. In order to sort of find your way out of the prison, you have to endure the restriction, and it sort of drags on and on. And I think in my case, we had no less than three retrograde periods for Saturn too. So it went on for about a year and a half or more. And that uh, the sort of duality behind the issue of structure is something that I think is it's very necessary at the moment to be thinking about, because we are at a point when we're trying to hopefully going to shuffle off a few structures that really don't serve us, both
Hmm.
politically and individually.
Yeah.
Um, and yet at the same time, I don't know, and I question whether we're ready to do without structure. So is it a case of accepting another structure, that one that perhaps we sign up to a little bit more for where we are now, one that maybe enables us a little bit more in terms of other possibilities that we might be looking at developing.
Right, so I 100% agree with you, which is why I wanted to bring this up, because what then happened were just literally sort of yesterday really was this full blood moon lunar eclipse, and an eclipse like this one, which is a total eclipse of the moon, basically offers a portal through which information can come and things can be removed. And what I was feeling into with this eclipse was the installation of the new grid, the Christo grid, being integrated with the noosphere of humans and the dragon lines of Mother Earth. So we've got this kind of triple aspect of grids. A lot of this coming out actually out of the back of the mystical column immersion that we just completed with yourself and many others all over the world. But then I'm like, okay, so that tells me what's coming in. That's great. It's exactly what we need. We need to lift the grid. We need to amplify the energies, because otherwise the density is going to keep dragging us all down, which I think is a lot of the sickness that we're going to be looking at. And then we have a Neptune Kazemi, which is where I'm going to preface the rest of the show on Rumble, which is at 29 degrees of Pisces, and that's coming up in just 4 days' time. Interestingly, on day 8 of this Wasteful, which will be the integration of the one we just completed, Pete, with the mystical column, which is really our fifth dimensional eagle's perch perspective. So I find it interesting that we're going to have to be in that place of integration on that day from the process that many of us just went through, but with this Neptune Cazimi at the anaretic degree of not just Pisces, but essentially the whole zodiac. So if
Yeah,
Saturn getting combusted by the sun is about the dissolution of the structure, the eclipse is about the switching of the template, then I'm thinking that the Neptune Cazimi is going to be the combusting of the illusion, particularly the illusion around medications in the collective consciousness.
yeah.
So I
Well,
put that
that's
up. Yeah,
yeah.
just to give us a preface, maybe you give a couple of comments that'll keep us
Well,
still
yeah.
in business on YouTube, and then we'll go over to Rumble.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very important because I think, again, it's interesting. One of the issues we're going to be looking at is the dissolution of NHS England,
Right.
which many people think is the dissolving of all health, the National Health Service. It is not the dissolving of the National Health Service, but it is the dissolving of a certain structure, if you like.
Right.
Now,
There we
whatever
go.
you think about, our wonderful politicians who are running our country for us. Um, I can't help but see the dismantling of a top-heavy bureaucratic structure potentially as a good thing. The question is, what's it going to be replaced by? And here we get back to individual responsibility, because from my perspective, and at the risk of shameless self-promotion again, I will say that I've got a book coming out later this year called Natural Healing, and this is
Uh-huh.
what it's about. It's how ready are you to step out of the conventional health system and the narratives around health, because we were joking earlier that a lot of the time, we're going back to the doctors to fix the things that they've caused in the first place. And that's not something which I think that we can't say even on YouTube, because there's a lot of recognition of that at the moment. There's a
Yes.
lot of recognition of the fact
Yeah.
that the health service isn't really the health service. Shh, it's actually the disease service.
Oh, hold on,
The place
bro. We're
where
gonna
you
get into
go.
trouble. And the other thing, of course, that I have to question is did the NHS actually still exist anyway? But we'll get into that in
Well,
a minute
not
because I
really,
understood
not
that it was
really.
a business that was sold off
It's all
30
been
years
sold
ago.
off pretty much. Yeah.
So yes, we are already getting into dangerous territory. Me and the brother can't help
Okay.
ourselves.
Well,
So I think but you know what I am going to do, just as a final point before we switch over, is just to bring up the charts for the two Kazimis for people who want to just clock those. I put them here. And please, those of you who are into astrology, do study them in a little bit more detail. There are definitely a lot more things going on. It's definitely a bit of a party time, dude, over in Pisces at the moment. It's like rack and stack. We have Saturn, we have the North Node, we have the Sun, we have Neptune, and we did have Venus and Mercury, and we'll get into the Mercury piece because this year, this Solkin rounds out with a Mercury Cazimi after a Venus Cazimi, which is a Venus star point. So that's where the energy shifts, basically from this moment after the Neptune Cazimi, the following day we have the Aries equinox, which is really the beginning, at least energetically, of spring appearing in our world, which of course is actually about, guess what? Death and rebirth. And it's about the balance of night and day. So I'm like, well, this is all very timely. And then, as of course, the sun having moved into Aries, then has a very different shift of energy from Pisces, which is collective consciousness, spirituality, into Aries, which is more about the I am. So I'm thinking this is where we get to see this shift into the new Earth sovereignty aspect, which is really, really beautiful because it starts with a Venus Cazimi, which is because, it's Cazimi is a star point and Venus is going into retrograde. So in fact, she's already in retrograde. So we're in that 40-day review process. But I find it kind of interesting, dude, that it rounds out this whole Zolkin, rounds out with a Mercury Cazimi. So it's like at the end of all of this, what is the message that Mercury wants to share with all of us? What is the message that we perhaps want to share from our Venus heart space with the world? Is it maybe a message about healing, about sovereignty? I don't know. Food for thought, and I'm going to switch off the feed now to YouTube, and we'll see all of you over on Rumble. Please do hit like and subscribe here on YouTube. Please put a comment, any comment. It helps us in our ongoing struggles with the algorithms. We're trying to make AI our friend, and we need your help, everybody. So please do pop something in the comment box, and you will win a golden banana on this channel, and there'll be something else for you to win over on Rumble if you manage to make it over there. So we'll see you all in just a few moments over on Rumble. Bye.